Hey everyone, welcome to the June subscription box. We've got a ton in here. Let's go ahead and get right into it. All right, let's see what we've got. As normal, we've got everything put in a ring box. Got a couple of larger things that wouldn't fit in there. Just packing, that's it. Let's go ahead and let's look at what's in the bag first. So here, between these two business cards is gold leaf. We put those business cards in there to protect them. This is going to be an interesting inlay piece for this ring. And it is real 24 karat gold leaf. It's fairly expensive, but I think the results it gives you are worth it. We can play with it again in a sec, but there's just a little preview. That looks nice. Okay, so I'm going to carefully put this back in the bag. Gold leaf is a little bit tricky to work with. It's so just incredibly thin. It'll just stick to your hand and just float around like it's nothing, so you got to be careful working with it. Then we've got 3 color pigments, and you guys probably looking at this are kind of like, what is going on here? Don't worry, we're not going to go too over the top and crazy. The idea is I'm going to use some gunmetal gray here, and I'm just going to use these 2 as accent colors. So this gold got a really awesome shine to it, so we're going to pair that with the gold leaf that we used for the inlay. And then this iridescent blue, I'll go more into this a bit later, but it's really awesome. It looks kind of white in the daytime here, but as you spread it and look at it from different angles, it gives it a blue hue. So the goal is to have a gray ring inlay that has a little bit of kind of blue and gold sparkle to it. Now let's go ahead and get into the box itself. Got a Patrick Adair design sticker. Glow powder. This is green glow powder. It's going to be very bright. I like to do green glow powder when I'm working with a darker inlay color like gray here. And so green, the brightest glow color, is what I picked. And then here we go. Here's a freebie. I'm kind of going all over the place with these materials. Hopefully you guys can keep up. This is a glow disc ring blank. These are really great. I think you guys are going to love working with these. We've done one in the past. We had a lot of good feedback on it, so we wanted to do another one. This is the neon orange. It looks really nice. It looks just super colorful, super contrasty, and it looks the same way at night. So really love these bad boys. Here's another freebie, glow light. It's a UV flashlight. I'll just hypercharge your glow powders really quick. So we've never included one of these. We just thought it'd be a good idea. And here we go. Here's another inlay material finally. This is turquoise. So, you guys are starting to piece together the theme here. We've got a gold accent in the inlay, as well as real actual gold that we'll inlay. And then this iridescent blue. I think it'll kind of look nice with this turquoise. So, we've got kind of a bit of color coordination. I'll set this aside because that's not really for this ring. Now here, it's just an extra mixing vial. I love having those included. And then last but not least, probably the most important thing in here is the ring blank itself, black ceramic. It's been a while since we've done black ceramic, but it's definitely a favorite of mine. Something that's just completely unique. I don't know of any other material that is black and just scratch resistant like this is. Maybe carbon fiber, but it doesn't have that shine that this has. You can have other materials like tungsten that's plated in a black material. That's just gonna wear away over time. So I really don't like working with materials that aren't kind of just solid all the way through. So black ceramic, awesome, great material. That's it for everything in the sub box. That is a lot to go over, I know, but we just try to kind of cram as much as we can into each sub box every month. So much to the point where it literally didn't even fit in this box this month. But feel free to not use something. If we're sending you freebies, you don't need to use the iridescent blue if you don't want to. Just save that for another project. So we're just trying to be as generous as we can with the sub box, cram in as much value as we can. If you don't want it for this particular project, save it and use it later. So no harm, no foul there, and share with us your creations that you make from it. Anyways, my next step from here, my inlay pieces is crushed turquoise. I've got quite a few small pieces. I might crush up some of the larger pieces to be a little bit smaller. I'll probably do a little bit of that. Other than that, we're pretty much set. The gold leaf is ready to go. I just need to be careful. I'll use tweezers to handle that. I like to use 2 pairs of tweezers so I can grab the ends and tear it off without having it stick to my hands, because that is quite troublesome with that. Other than that, I just need to prep my inlay powder. So I'm going to do a bunch of color testing because I want to make sure that it's got the right color to it. I want to make sure it still glows really bright at night. If you didn't know, if you add too much color pigment, your glow is going to be detracted. So you want to add as little pigment as you can while still getting the daytime color that you want. So anyways, I will stop rambling. We'll go ahead and get mixing here. I'll crush up the turquoise, then we can get started on the actual inlaying of the ring itself. Oh, and almost forgot, got my PPE. So face shield, always like to use this, especially while I've got the lathe turning. I don't want any inlay pieces falling out, going at me. Just a dust mask. You don't really want to be inhaling anything, even if it is non-toxic. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started. All right, I've got all my pigments added in quantities that I think will be the best, but I'm going to do a color test to make sure. So put down a dab of medium CA. Then I'll cover it. If the color's where I like, I'll just roll with it. If I need to add anything, I'll do that. As soon as I've got it where I want it, I'll go ahead and start the next steps. All right, all my materials are prepped and ready to inlay. I've got my ring blank here. I'll go ahead and take that out of the bag. This is black ceramic, so you have to remember you need to cushion your mandrel with electric tape. So I'll go ahead and do that right now so I don't forget. I'll just take a bit off. I've got my large expanding ring mandrel here. That fits on, I'll put it on the second step. It could maybe go on the third step if I tried to push it, but I don't like to do that. So I'll put the electric tape around and it should fit perfectly on that second step. You can cut it with scissors or a knife to get a cleaner edge, but I find that usually you can just kind of do it by hand and it doesn't leave you with any negative results. Now, it's fitting nicely on that second step. Obviously I should put it in the lathe before doing much more than this, but that is on there, ready to go. Should be ready to get inlaying. The inlay powder I think is going to look really nice. You can see on those color samples I did, you saw just kind of a slight shimmer of both gold and blue. So it's perfect, exactly what we were going for. I think it will actually look nice. I was kind of like hesitant going into it, maybe it'd be a bit much, but I think I really like it. It's still very subtle. It's gray overall. But yeah, now let's go ahead and get our gold leaf ready to go. I'll set everything else aside. Now how I like to do gold leaf is just take 2 pairs of tweezers. If you've got them, you can just use whatever you've got, make it work. I just like to rip off little pieces just one at a time. So it's just very delicate. You don't need much because it's perfectly opaque. You cannot see through it at all. So you just need the tiniest little bit of it. This one sheet should last me for at least several rings. So this is plenty. I'm going to not inlay it until I'm about filled half of the inlay. That way I'm not wasting it and just covering it up with glow powder. I'll wait until it's built up just a little bit. Then I'll start adding the gold pieces. I'll go ahead and use the turquoise from the beginning because I've got so much of this that I'm not worried that I will run out even in the slightest. So I think that is literally everything. I'll go ahead and check in with you guys, I think, when we're finished. All the other steps, if you do have questions, you can go back. Some of the first videos that we made were very, very detailed, very long, so a lot of people thought they were a little bit boring, but if you have questions, they are super helpful. So if you got just any particulars you'd like to know about, whether it's sanding down the inlay, polishing, anything like that, go ahead and watch those. For this ring, nothing's going to be too challenging. There's no hard materials I'm working with. I'm not using diamond or anything like that, and the ceramic is really easy to work with. Other than adding the electric tape, there's really nothing else to it. You can't really scratch this unless you're using diamond abrasives, which I strongly recommend you don't use for 99% of the rings that you make. So as long as you're just sticking to the normal basic steps of our typical ring making, this ring here should be a breeze. All right, I'm now finished with the first layer or two of inlaying. I was switching between medium CA and my super thin. I put medium down, that is kind of thick, it sticks in place, it allows me to position everything how I want. Then I use the super thin to just really absorb into, especially the glow powder. It's kind of tricky to get the medium to soak into that. So the super thin just completely solves that issue. We're looking really good. One thing I'll note is that I used a lot of pieces on this inlay, a lot more than I usually do. I really just kind of filled the whole thing in. I did do it by hand. I guess I'd say it's probably about 50% fill, when I usually do about 30. If you were to just dump your turquoise into the inlay as you had the lathe on, excuse me, that would be more like 100%. So I'd say there's about 50% empty that I could potentially fit more into, but I don't want to, so it's important to not just dump it in there, so I had to individually inlay it. Now I've got the glow powder built up really nicely. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the gold leaf and I'm going to start snaking it through in between pieces of turquoise. I want it to look kind of like gold veins running among the pieces of turquoise and give it just kind of a natural look. So I'm going to do my best to emulate that look. We'll see how it turns out. Let's go ahead and do it. All right, I've got everything ready to go. I just need to fill the rest of the inlay in with glow powder and we should be set. As you can see, there's a lot of gold that's showing right now. I did that on purpose. That's because most of it's gonna get covered up with the glow powder. So in the end, we should be left with some really subtle, just kind of lines and streaks of gold. That's what I want here. I don't want big chunky pieces. If you do want that effect, you can just cover it with nothing but straight, clear CA from this point. I don't really want that, especially for this design. That's not what I had in mind. So I'm gonna go ahead and add extra glow powder. So I'll go all around the ring. These are a little bit of super thin to really help get into all the pores. And then just a light dusting of our powder mixture all the way around. It's gonna kind of cover everything up and ruin it. But once we grind back into the ring, the really cool texture and pattern that it has will be revealed. So it makes it a little bit more exciting. Okay, that's going great. I'll do another layer or two, give it a bit of accelerator, and then give it maybe 5 or 10 minutes to harden. After that, I'll use some of my CA accelerator. It is a little bit hot today, so maybe I'll just give it about 5 minutes and I'll start grinding into it. All right, just like I'd hoped, to get it sanded flush was a lot easier than it would be with most rings. The turquoise isn't super hard, neither is the inlay material or the gold, so I didn't go through much sandpaper at all. I literally just used 2. Sometimes I use up to 8 if we've got diamonds in there. So that was pretty simple, fairly straightforward. We've already got it looking really nice and clean. I didn't have to go too harsh on it, so the ceramic is still looking great and polished. I do have a couple of little voids. I don't know if they're showing up on camera, but just small little pockets. So I'm gonna go ahead and take the ultra thin or the super thin CA and dab it on any of those little voids. It's gonna go everywhere, that's fine. It'll just take a second to sand off. Sometimes the air can get trapped underneath there, so I like to take the tip of a razor blade, just poke it down in, make sure it's down in there. I think this time around there's no issue, but just in case. If there's an air bubble, you sand it back down and then you're left with the bubble again. Then you just have to fill it, so it's a little bit annoying, but it's not the end of the world. You can always just redo it until you've got the outcome you'd like. Okay, that's looking good. One thing that I'm already noticing is that the gold and blue shimmer that we added to the pigment is fairly subtle. It should start popping more when we polish it, but that's just something to note. It's a very small detail, so maybe you don't need to bother worrying about it, but again, on the other hand, it's kind of the small details that separate the good from the great. So if you're trying to stand out as an artist, here's just one small thing you can do, and if you do a lot of small things, people will start taking notice of that. So not a terrible idea, and we'll see how it results when we're getting more towards the end and it's starting to get polished, but we'll see. All right, I've got it sanded down flush. We got rid of the voids, looking great. I'm gonna switch over to my sandpapers now. I think this is 180 here, and it goes all the way up to 2500, which, especially for this ring, is going to be a little bit overkill. I could just stop at 1000 grit and it should look just about the same. But again, if you're trying to make something special, it's kind of worth the extra 30 seconds, maybe 2 minutes it takes to go the extra mile. So it doesn't take long, so I just like to do it just in case it helps. And then, of course, after that, we'll hit it with our AstroTech polish, step 1 through 3. Should be looking really nice. And the ring should be finished at that point. We'll check it out, say what we liked, see if there's anything we dislike, and take some nice pics and go from there. All right, here it is. Check this out. Really pleased with the way this turned out. The gold, it didn't show up as much as I would have hoped, I'd say, especially in this area right here. I'd like to see a lot more, just kind of like gold veins running through the whole ring. More like what we've got going on here. I really like this section of the ring. So that's not to say that we couldn't change things if we did another iteration. I only used maybe not even a quarter of the gold sheet provided. So I would just pack in a lot more gold next time. The turquoise, however, I think that's perfect. I don't think I'd change anything with the turquoise. Got a really nice distribution of it. A lot of small pieces, plenty of larger ones too. Because it's so opaque, it's not subtle at all. I don't like to use massive pieces of turquoise in most of my rings, that is. So The pieces like this, these are totally fine, but I'm glad the whole ring isn't like that. And then the inlay itself, I really like that. If anything, I think I'd use a little bit more color pigment, make that a bit darker to match the black ceramic. Speaking of the black ceramic, that looks really nice. Look at the surface finish there as the light goes across. Really not a lot you can do to ruin black ceramic. Same thing with tungsten, so that's what makes them so great to work with. So yeah, really pleased with this ring. It should glow really nice as well. So the inlay itself is a little lighter than I'd like in the daytime, but there is the kind of trade-off, it's gonna glow brighter because of that. So you guys, when you're making your rings, you can kind of pick and choose exactly what traits you'd like your glow pigment or glow powder to have. And then the accent colors we did. Let's can I zoom in any closer? There we go. Those are very subtle, and I'm using diffused soft lighting, which is not good for showing those. So maybe I'll take a couple of pictures with some harsh lighting. Maybe I'll put my iPhone LED right up close to it. But in person, you can notice that little extra shimmer, and I think it's nice. I think it's worth it. You just, I just added a little bit of that blue pearlescent, and a little bit of the gold, and I think the results pay off. It's really hard to see on camera. Right now I'm getting a little bit of it. But it's just those small details. Again, I said this before, but the small details is what's really gonna set you apart as a ring maker. And it just really kind of helps bring the ring to life. So I know it's hard to see, but right now, what you're looking at, that's pretty good display of what's going on. So anyways, guys, that is going to be it for this video. As always, if you have any questions at all, what I want you to do is go to our Facebook group, join that if you haven't already, and leave your questions there. I'd be happy to answer. I try to weigh in on literally almost everything that's posted in there. But what's so awesome is we have tons, hundreds of other people who are there who also have experience, who also had a lot of good input to add. So if you have any questions, that's such a great resource. And I really love seeing your guys' work. So if you make any modifications to the design that you really like and you want to post, I love seeing those. If you just followed the tutorial, same thing as I did, I'd love to see how yours turned out. So anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next month.